I'm gonna start this video just by putting it out there that I don't like arguing. You know, I don't have the energy for that shit. I probably won't argue with you if you tell me I'm wrong or I'm stupid in the comment section. I only do that because I'm going to get into a video that completely raises the question of debate and possible arguing. So I'm gonna just be in the comments watching y'all eating popcorn and shit. So go ahead and have fun with that. But a friend of mine, shout out my boy Justin, just the bad guy, gave me or presented a question to me a couple days ago. He said to me, yo, who are you taking all time, Vince or Dominique? I just sat there for like 10 seconds. I couldn't really come to a straight answer, and I was like, okay, Vince. When I first asked myself that question, my answer was one thing, and I thought it was definitively right too. I was set on it. But now my answer is completely different. But I'm still on the fence. So I present this question to the rest of the world and all of y'all out there. Who is greater, Vince Carter or Dominique Wilkins?
Oh, Rod, a reverse two-handed. I think many people thought that Dominique should have won it last year, and he's going to show us a lot of things today like that.
Now, when you first think about this question, right, you might think it's kind of a simple answer, but when you really get into the nitty-gritty and all the things that could go into saying someone is greater than the other, it really becomes complicated. So I'm going to use 4 categories here. I'm going to use their accolades, their stats for their career, their playoff success, because neither of them have won a ring, and I don't think Vince is going to do it, sadly, and their impact. And now a lot of things fall under impact, but we'll get there when we get there. Starting with the accolades, Vince is an 8-time All-Star. From 2000 to 2007, he made the All-Star team consecutively, so that can be called his prime years. That was his run. During that run, he made All-NBA second team 1 time in 2001, and All-NBA third team 1 time in 2000. He did not make All-NBA team first team ever, and I was actually surprised to see that. I actually thought he did make it at least once or twice. You would imagine maybe because of the hype kind of player that he was throughout that period that he would have, but he didn't. He did win Rookie of the Year in 1999, and then he just took off and took over Canada and put the Toronto Man's Dem on the map for the foreseeable future. And of course, he won the Slam Dunk Championship in 2000 with probably the greatest display of, the greatest set list of dunks ever in a fucking dunk contest.
Right here is Vince Carter with his first shot. Let's go home! Let's go home, ladies and gentlemen! Let's go home! Alley on the first round for Vince Carter. Oh, it's over! It's over, ladies and gentlemen!
On the Neek side of things, he is a 9-time All-Star from 1986 to 1994 consecutively. He made All-NBA first team in 1986 and won the scoring championship that year. 4-time All-NBA second team, 86, 88, 91, and 93, and 2-time All-NBA third team in 89 and 94. So basically, between 1986 to 1994, he was on one, I think all but one, of the All-NBA teams in his run. And he was obviously 2-time Slam Dunk champion. And this is significant just because I think I get into it a little towards the impact section. In 1996, he actually goes overseas and wins a EuroLeague championship and MVP. At some point though, he does go on to mention that it never felt as satisfying as it would have been to win an NBA championship, but it's still relevant enough to mention because he was probably in mid-30s by then, already tore his Achilles, but he was still putting up numbers, so I think it's worth mentioning still. Now this is when the disparity starts becoming a bit more apparent, right? Vince's career stats. I'm going to tell you his career high, his averages, and his best year. His career high, he scored 51, twice actually, once for the Nets and once for the Raptors. He has 25,571 points and counting, because he's not done yet, which equals to an average of 17 points per game, 4.3 rebounds per game, and 3.1 assists per game. And in his best year, which is 2005, on the Nets, he averaged 27.5 points per game, 5.9 rebounds per game, 4.7 assists, 1.5 steals, and shot 46% from the field and 42% from 3. That's solid. You cannot, that's a very, very solid year all around in every asset of his game. However, he didn't even make an All-NBA team that year. I think that's a testament to what the crop of players was like for him to be competing with at that time. Jumping over to Neek's career stats, now I'm telling you, this is where you start to see it. Neek's career high is 57. He did that twice. Right? Then he also dropped a 52 and a 51, just something light, you know, just some off days. For his career, he has 26,668 points, so that is about 1,000 more points than Vince, but I don't know if Vince will catch that. He probably won't. So that equates to a 24.8 point per game average for Neek, with 6.7 rebounds per game, 2.5 assists, and in his best year, which was 1985 going into 86, that same year where he made All-NBA First Team, he averaged 30.3 points per game, 7.9 rebounds, 2.6 assists, 1.8 steals, and shot 46% from the field. But get this, he shot 18% from 3. So that basically means my son was bricking the fuck out of all his jump shots and averaging 30 on 2s. Imagine that. Averaging 30, just putting your nuts on niggas' head. That's all he would do for every game, just dunking and averaging 30. So that in itself is just think about it for a little bit, consider it.
And what a spectacular dunk to punctuate the night for the Atlanta.
Sparrow, rather Hodge couldn't control. Here's Sparrow, 3-on-2, Dominique Wilkins.
See the setup, Sparrow with the dunk ball. Excellent.
Now, I might include this later in the video or just right here because I'm already talking about it, obviously. But in 1993, Dominique Wilkins came back off of a torn Achilles, right? He is easily the player that has come back from this injury the best in NBA history. After coming back from a torn Achilles, Neek averaged 29.9 points per game, 6.8 rebounds, 3.2 assists, a steal, 46% from the field, and then his 3-point percentage was 38%. So when you take a look at his year post torn Achilles, aka the worst possible injury any basketball player could ever suffer, it is actually still better than Vince's best year. That is what shook me. That is what really had me looking like, huh? Now, as far as playoff success, right, both of them really they had long careers, especially Vince, probably the fucking longest career ever. So he has a lot of experience in the playoffs, but I'm just going to use his most notable periods where he was like a prime player and he was carrying a team. 2 examples. First one being the Eastern Conference Finals push, where he came up short against Allen Iverson in 2001 while he was on the Raptors. Now, during this push, his averages were very solid. He was obviously the #1 option and doing a good job carrying the team. He was averaging 27.3 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, 4.7 assists, and 1.7 steals, and that's throughout the entire course of that playoffs up until the Eastern Conference Finals. It's too bad he ran into fucking greatness, because my son Iverson, the braided menace, absolutely dicked the Raptors down, bro. It was bad. He was just going crazy. He was scoring at will, man. There was nothing they had for him.
There goes Iverson, blocked by Alvin Williams. Ball knocked loose. Carter tripped up. Crowd wanted to travel. Curry for 3. Bang! Curry from downtown, and it's a 1-point game.
Now, Bill, you want a child's in the game.
No wonder he's in the
Vince actually gets a very decent shot at the game winner, because if you've never seen this moment in NBA history, here it comes. Vince actually gets a shot to win this game but does not make it. And I always think that this is probably one of the most bittersweet moments in Vince's career, because he missed the shot that could have sent them to the finals, right? However, that same day, he graduated from college.
Vince Carter coming to it. Also watched a quick pass to Curry after he inbounds. Curry has it. Carter trying to get free. Carter at the buzzer. No good. And the Sixers hold on and advance to the conference finals.
He went back to UNC. It was something for his mother because it's something she always wanted from him. And he graduated that day, that morning, and then flew in to play that game that night. And then had an amazing game, but then missed the most important shot. So it sucks that he probably has to remember it that way, honestly. Now, his second example I'm going to use is 2005, where they fall short to the Heat. And, you know, how much can you really say about that? The Heat go on to win the championship, and Dwayne Wade just goes the fuck crazy. How can you be mad that you lost to the team that actually wins it all? So, in that series, though, it didn't make it that far. He got out in the semifinals, and throughout that period in the playoffs, he averaged 29.9, 7 rebounds, 5.3 assists, and 1.8 steals. I'm personally hurting a little bit when I'm, reflecting and making this video, because actually my brother, well, to the guy who would go on to become my brother-in-law, he was dating my sister at the time. He actually invited me to one of the games in Jersey to watch the Nets play the Heat. And at that time, I was still fresh, new in the country. I didn't watch basketball yet. I didn't like basketball. I didn't start liking basketball until about 2 seasons afterward, when Wade put his nuts all over Anderson Varejão's fuzzy fro. That's when I fell in love with ball. So when I look back at this, I really regret just not being able to have experienced that game, because the Heat went on to win the chip and I should have just fucking went, basically. Now, reflecting on Neek's playoff success in comparison, right? So Vince got dicked by Iverson, got dicked by Wade. Now, Dominique, it was just literally every year I would just put dicked by Bird. That's it. That was the entire story of Dominique's career. I wouldn't be surprised if Neek just wants to, like, I know that they have mutual respect for each other at this point, but basically Larry Bird is to Dominique Wilkins as Michael Jordan was to everybody in the 90s.
That fade away from the, it was nothing you can do about it.
Tell us about it, Sneak. Tell us about Larry Bird.
Seems like you have some experience on this topic. Well, Kevin McHale scored 57 one night. So Bird said, I'm going to break your record against Atlanta. Yeah. I'm like, won't get 55, not here. He got so hot in that game that you talk about that patented step back. He was doing that step back, and he switched it to his left hand 3 separate times in that game and hit a 3. He was scoring anywhere on the floor that he wanted.
Is this when the bench was giving each other 5?
The bench was giving each other 5.
So did you get in a fight with them after the game? Forget Larry. Did you beat anybody on the bench? Because you giving 5, he's scoring on me.
Every one of those guys got fined $3,000.
Okay, good.
I've never seen a guy get that hot before.
After doing all of this research, I honestly feel that if it was not for Larry Bird, Dominique Wilkins would be an NBA champion. That's just me. His most impressive year, right, because it's just consistent years of running into the Celtics basically for him. And the Hawks were a team that kind of struggled. He was really the main guy on the team, and it was only maybe 1 or 2 years that they had a decent lineup, that it wasn't just him and a bunch of other niggas, that just some niggas, just JSNs, So his most successful year in the playoffs was 1987. He had the legendary duel with Larry Bird that went down to the final game of the Eastern Conference Finals, and he absolutely went crazy clutch and legendary in the fourth, which is why it's so stupid that people still will shit on him and act like Bird wouldn't absolutely dominate the game today if he played. I hate that plumbers narrative, that milkmen shit, that Twitter people. I hate that shit. I hate it. But I got completely off topic. His most impressive year, he averaged 31.2, 6.4 rebounds, 2.8 assists, and 1.3 steals throughout the entire run of that playoffs until Bird got in his way. Now, with all of that in mind, neither of Vince's best years, his averages in his best playoff years, match up to Neek's. And Neek even had a secondary year later in his career where he averaged 30 in the playoffs again. And that's still more than Vince. Like, finally, we get down to the impact area. Now, this is where you guys are completely free to add your own comments and what should fall under impact, or what did I miss, or what should be taken into consideration. I have 5 bullet points for each guy and their impact, right? So Vince, I said his first one is he put the Toronto Mans them on the map. It's now when you think Toronto Raptors, you have to think of Kawhi. But when I think Toronto, I think Vince, I think Kyle Lowry, I think Fred VanVleet, and I think Kawhi. So, of course, let me not leave out Pascal. He's going to be great one day, but let me just not do that because I don't want y'all to come for me. But I still think Vince immediately when I think Raptors, and I still think Vince should have a statue in Toronto because he put them on. Like, if it wasn't for Vince, really nobody would think the Raptors are cool. And the Raptors, at this point in time, I think are one of the cooler. The Raptors right now kind of have the swag, especially last year. They have the swag of what the Sonics used to be, I think. I wasn't around back then, but correct me if I'm wrong. However, I think that's the spark that Vince provided there. And it's a shame that he didn't spend his, or isn't spending his last season there, because he said he's done after this year. Ironically, he's retiring on the Hawks, which is Dominique's, Alma franchise. That covers the first two. Third, this nigga jumped over somebody. We're gonna take a moment to acknowledge this. He jumped over some random German dude that's like 7 feet tall. It's one of the most abnormal, it's like, you ever seen Like Mike where he puts on the shoes and takes off and dunks from the free throw line? It's one of those where you just stare like, what the fuck, what I just saw? It's so crazy that you really don't know like how to react to it. I don't know, I didn't scream when I saw it, I didn't be like, oh shit, like I didn't do none of that. It's just like, what did I see? Secondarily, he provided probably one of the greatest contact dunks of all time when he absolutely fucking violated Alonzo Mourning.
Carter's got it. Carter drops. Oh! Big finish. Vince Carter with a brilliant dunk. Vince Carter just took the imaginary ladder.
So disrespectful. Wait, are we going to show video?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Okay, so prior to this, in the first quarter, I dunked on him, just an easy dunk or whatever. Boom. Next, RJ, 2 plays later, dunks on him. At halftime, we're sitting at halftime, and I said, man, we'll never be able to dunk on Alonzo again because knowing him, he's going to jump at us and try to put us on the ground.
Right.
That's just the way it was.
Yeah.
And I said, so the only way you'd be able to pull that off is if you take the bump,
cock back,
and then
bump,
take the bump,
cop back,
and then, dunk it. And lo and behold, it happened. So I took the dribble, and I'm looking up, and I'm like, wait a minute, he's standing there. He's not stepping forward. He's not stepping forward. And then all of a sudden, he steps forward, but it was already too late, like right there. I'm like, okay.
Okay.
Right when I bite my lip, I was like, all right, it's time to go. And then
oh, man.
next thing I know, he falls down. And
you so disrespectful, bro.
He didn't talk to me
like that
for,
as he shouldn't,
6-7 years.
No.
I think he said like Alonzo didn't even talk to him after that for a while, for good reason too. But this is arguably one of the greatest dunks I've ever seen in my life. Now, obviously, dunk contests, his influence there it goes without saying. Like, everybody that loves basketball has been watching basketball for a while. You've seen the video of this. You've heard the clips of Kenny Smith just going crazy about it's over. This is a staple in the history of the NBA. This is a moment that is like a part of montages to come for the rest of years and ever. Basically, that dunk contest has so much nostalgia and history behind it that it basically inspired this entire generation of kids. Like, all of them watched Vince, and all of them would probably attest to saying that like that was a moment for them. So he really revolutionized dunking, but as did Dominique when we get to it. All right, finally, he's still fucking playing, and he's like 62. He's about to have pension, retirement. He's really up there, bro. And Vince is still out here playing, and he can still dunk. I just feel like it's worth noting that that is possible, that he's doing it, and that's part of his impact, because not a lot of players can hold that kind of longevity throughout their career. He's still, yeah, you can still put him on the NBA roster, and he's still productive. Finally, on Nique's impact side, it starts off with the fact that he inspired everybody who is inspiring us, or has inspired us. So the same way I said Vince inspired this entire generation, Nique inspired all of Vince's generation. They really are, when you take a good look at it, they are mirror images of each other as a player and as the icon that they were and what they meant to each generation of basketball. Next up, obviously, Nique. When you think Hawks, you think Nique. Like, he is the greatest Hawk of all time, hands down, unless you're going back to really the 50s Milkman era where like Bob Pettit was shitting on dudes, which I'm not going to do that.
For his level! A missed foul shot by Thompson. Again, Grant Long has missed 3 here in this quarter. Slam dunk as he hop, skipped, and jumped down the lane all the way and put it in. That was some slam dunk material there, folks.
Well, the human highlight machine got it cranked up.
So when you think Hawks, you think Nique, and when you think Raptors, you think Vince. So that's another scratch point. Third, he just put his nuts all over everybody's fucking head. Like, if you just watch his top 10 dunks compilation, holy shit, he really had bounce, bro. He dunks the way that you can dunk in NBA 2K20. Just hop, step, and just take the fuck off. And that's another scratch point, because you really, when you look at what Dominique has done to some people, it's hard to say it's just Vince simply that much better of an in-game dunker than him. It's really kind of preference. There's an argument for both sides. Same way, just like how Zoe wouldn't talk to Vince for years, Bob Lanier, one of 2K's favorite random-ass niggas they like to make just a weird amethyst diamond card out of in my team, didn't talk to Dominique for years because he violated him in one of the greatest dunks ever, and then his kids was just like, you really let another man do that to you? Wow, couldn't be my dad.
Bob Lanier, we had a game where it's the end of the game and I was on the block. So I come to the middle and they cut me off and I went back to baseline and I jumped and Bob Lanier jumped. I remember turning in the air and I dunked on him at the end of the game. He didn't speak to me for 9 years after that. 9 years. I remember after we both retired and he said, I just started liking you. I like, why? He said, when you dunked on me, and I had to go home, and my kid said, how do you let that little skinny kid dunk? He said, I hated you. I'm like, for real?
Imagine how it would feel to have your kid say that shit to you. I'm surprised he didn't punch him, to be honest. Finally, which is what I mentioned earlier in the video, Dominique's longevity, I think, is definitely more impressive than Vince's longevity, because even though I think Vince has lasted longer, Neek was better for longer. He went on to win that EuroLeague MVP and championship, and in his latter years of his career, even post horrible Achilles injury, he was having better years than what Vince was having even in some of his best prime years in his younger years. So when you put all of that, when you juxtapose all of this information, the decision between the two is not as simple as you probably would have thought it to be when you first asked yourself the question. What was your answer when you first started the video, and what's your answer now, and why? Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Be sure to leave a like. I'll see y'all in the next one. Maybe is there other players that you have in mind that you'd want me to put next to each other? I actually like doing this, so let me know.
Greatest dunker ever was
Vince Carter. Greatest dunk or dunk?
Dunker. Greatest dunker in the dunk contest.
Dunk contest. Yes. Okay.
Greatest dunker in the dunk contest.
I might have to go with Vince Carter also.
Over Michael.
Vince Carter, greatest dunker in the dunk contest, Dominique in the game.
Vince Carter, the All-Star game for sure.
Vince Carter dunk contest, Dominique in the game, Dr. J, because he did that first from the free throw line.
Vince Carter in the dunk contest, Tracy McGrady in the game, because he always had the same move where he'd come, throw it with the left, go around, catch it on the right.
Michael Jordan, both. Game, contest, anything.
I got to go with Dominique.
Yeah,
in-game dumper, Dominique, to me.
I just think, you know, when you're dunking, you hear guys screaming, ah, boom. When Dominique was dunking, you'd hear the opponent screaming, ah! So I'd go with Dominique.